I'm joined by Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. Josh Frydenberg, a lot of people took out mortgages over the past couple of years, encouraged, of course, by the extremely low interest rates. How much extra do you expect a person on average mortgage, $500,000, are going to be paying each month a year from now?
Well, the average is about $600,000 for a new loan, and that will see today, as a result of this 25 basis point increase, about an $85 a month increase. And we do know that the cash rate has been at a historic low, and monetary policy and fiscal policy have worked in hand in glove to support the economy during this very big economic shock from COVID. So it was only a question of time before, Andrew, both fiscal policy and monetary policy would normalise.
Yeah, but my question was how much in a year from now, because the Reserve Bank governor was saying, look, he thinks it could go up interest rates, 2.5%. So I'm just wondering what you think people will be paying extra on their mortgage in a year or so.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that, because those are decisions for an independent Reserve Bank, and they will be taken based on the context and the economic circumstances of the time. What I do know is that it's not reasonable to expect that emergency level, whether it's fiscal support or monetary policy and cash rates, stay in place indefinitely. It was only a question of time before it started to normalise, and I point out to you that other central banks around the rest of the world have already moved. In the United States, they've lifted the cash rate by 25 basis points, in the United Kingdom by 65 basis points, in Canada by 75 basis points, and in New Zealand by 125 basis points. But what was good news from the statement today in the Reserve Bank is that the unemployment rate is actually going to be even lower than it is at 4% today. They're expecting it to go to 3.5%, and they're also saying that they're seeing wages pick up.
But they also expected inflation to go much, much higher than your budget even predicted. But it's only a month or so ago, two ago. The Reserve Bank today said it had to raise interest rates now much sooner than it was telling us, like a year and a half sooner, because inflation had risen sooner and higher than it predicted. But didn't you make exactly the same mistake and then spend too much pouring petrol onto this inflation fire?
Well, what's been driving up inflation around the rest of the world is two major international factors, namely the COVID pandemic, which has led to supply chain disruption, has seen freight costs increase by fivefold. That has played through to the supermarket shelves in Australia. But also the war in Ukraine, which has seen a big increase in commodity prices, whether it was fuel or wheat or other prices which have flowed through here to Australia. When we saw the inflation number come out just a few days ago at 5.1%, we saw a 35% increase through the year for fuel prices. That was the single biggest increase that we've seen in Australia since the Iraq invasion of Kuwait back in 1990. So you have to understand these international factors are driving
and the Reserve Bank governors. The Reserve Bank governor backed you up on this. Those are the big factors. They're not the only factors. And I'd ask again, the Reserve Bank has said, oh, look, it's risen, inflation's risen sooner and higher than it predicted. But you made the same mistake in the budget. Did you spend too much as well?
Well, we spent as necessary, and that has put Australia's economy in the very strong position it is today, Andrew, with a stronger economic recovery than every major advanced economy around the world. In the United States, there are 1.5 million fewer Americans in work today than at the start of the pandemic, yet in Australia there are 400,000 more Australians in work today than at the start of the pandemic. When programs like JobKeeper were brought to an end, the Labor Party criticised us. Anthony Albanese said the economic roof would come crashing down. He said that.
I've got that, but I'm just asking.
And so what we did, we brought those emergency economic support payments to an end. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm just wondering whether they went on too long, because the Reserve Bank says, well, it's changed policies. It's actually said it's changed policies because inflation is much worse than it predicted. Don't you now also have to change your policies and say, cut spending in light of the inflation figures now?
Well, a couple of points to make to you, Andrew. Firstly, we have brought those emergency economic supports to an end, even though we were criticised at the time by the Labor Party. We're continuing to provide tax relief, in fact, with structural changes to the tax system, because we want to reward and encourage aspiration and also people's hard work. And that's very different in our approach compared to the Labor Party. This budget that we've just unveiled just a few weeks ago actually invested in the things that makes our economy stronger, investing in our region.
That's true, but since then we've had the inflation figures come out that are much higher than the Reserve Bank says it expected. They're higher than what you predicted in the budget. I'm wondering whether you've got to, both parties have got to change their policies to catch up with this new reality.
Well, we provided the cost of living relief to reflect those challenges that Australian households are going through right now, and that's very important. With regard to higher inflation, as you know, key payments like the pension are indexed, and we've already seen a pensioner get more than $20 additional a fortnight as a result of those higher inflation rates. But the measures that we took in the budget were designed to create 1.3 million new jobs over the next 5 years. They're important investments that will see our economy get even stronger. So I stand by those commitments. I stand by our fiscal strategy, which has delivered the equal lowest unemployment rate in 48 years, but also importantly saw a more than $100 billion improvement to the budget bottom line, which is the most significant improvement Australia has seen in some 70 plus years. And that's a result of having more people in work and fewer people on welfare.
But no change. This is the thing. But just yes, you've given the halved the petrol excise, and that would help a lot of people with the petrol price rises. But I'm thinking neither party wants to, in this election campaign, admit that the spending is out of control and it's got to be wound back in light of what we're seeing. The Reserve Bank is changing course, and I think the government should be changing course, and the Labor Party should be changing course. But listen, while we've still got time, you're facing a huge challenge to keep your seat in Kooyong. Your main opponent is one of these so-called climate independents, actually, funded by Simon Holmes à Court, and they're threatening several Labor seats, not just yours. What do you think is actually driving this amazing support, particularly with the ABC, from the ABC, for these candidates? They're getting a lot of support, and you know that, and that's a threat to you.
Well, Andrew, I'm up against a billboard and a slogan and a very slick social media campaign. When you go to their website and you look for the detail on the policy, you can't see any. I mean, when it comes to a climate change target, there's no plan, no costings as to how they get there. In fact, Monique Ryan was asked by Neil Mitchell, what is the cost of your emissions reduction target? And she said that's an unreasonable question. And she's refusing to debate me on Channel 9 because she doesn't want to go into the Docklands to have a debate with me. It's walking away from that level of scrutiny that is getting people to ask the question, why should they vote for a so-called independent who's a former member of the Labor Party, who, when was asked very directly on TV, on radio, what is your political background, said they had none, said they were a clean skin. In fact, went as far as to say they were a small L Liberal, which is patently false. Long-standing members, she's a long-standing member of the Labor Party, was found in social media to be promoting the Labor Party and attacking the Liberal Party for years after she left the Labor Party, and is not prepared to tell the community
I'm more worried about her
whose vote she seeks,
plan.
how they will vote in the hung parliament.
Well, exactly correct. But I'm worried about her climate plan. She wants to cut emissions by even more than Labor, 60% by 2030. She backs the Zali Steggall plan, another one of these so-called climate independents. But that's not a plan for cuts. It's a plan for a super climate commission like Tim Flannery ran. Only this time the government is forced to listen to such a commission. It's got incredible powers. There's not a word about how it will cut emissions. It's just you got to listen to this new Flannery Commission. Does that worry you?
Well, these targets without a plan, without a costing, is something that the community, whether it's in Kooyong or more broadly with these so-called teal seats, need to be asking the hard questions, the second, the third, the fourth question, because there's simply no detail. And they're asking the community for a vote, yet they're not prepared to tell the community how they will vote in the event of a hung parliament. So It really is a scam, and now people are starting to wake up to it.
Well, let us hope. Josh Frydenberg, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.